where's the intro music?
Like, why would you be saying that when that's your job?
Because have you just done the first thing against friendship, which is tell a lie?
Oh, like I thought, like somewhere in my mind, I have a memory that you had taken on the job of creating the intro music. No, old age. I think you should still be friends with old people.
Yes.
First message.
Now, play the Friends theme song. Quick. Why are we here, Daisy?
So, hello, everybody. I hope you're keeping well and minding your mood. This is important. But yeah, so I was trying to think of the title of another one to add to it. What have we been doing? This week we chose friendship as our topic. Lots of reasons, but I guess mainly because it's like, how important is friendship? Is there anything more important than friendship? I don't know. But COVID is obviously somehow related to the issue of friendship, and there is that whole piece about how have you maintained it. Like I've obviously spent a lot of time with different groups online and listening to young people and talking to teachers or youth workers, and particularly what's really kind of cut me to the core is the idea that young people going into first year in secondary school, and the first day they have to wear a mask, and every day since they've worn a mask, and everything is so restricted and regulated that like that natural energy and enthusiasm and terror and the whole game of making friends in secondary, like how has that been for those? And then beyond that, everyone, like whether you're adult or a young person, maintaining friendships has probably been a challenge over COVID. And, it feels like we're getting to a point now, like there's another transition happening, moving from level 5 to level 3 and Crimbo. But again, all the cultural things that you would have done, like how many people connect over Christmas or people come home from other places, and that sustains and really gives a buzz to a friendship. So we felt that we could just check in on friendship as a topic, but how we're going to do it is we're going to look at 3 elements of friendship. The metaphor is a friendship stew. So if you were creating a friendship stew, what ingredients would need to be in there for it to be? And then alongside that, we were thinking about what sort of ingredients are complete, absolute no-nos, and what would create a toxic stew. And then we're going to hopefully look at, in the last bit, like just how to, like, is there a how to for making friends? Maybe, maybe not.
Like, I just think it's fascinating that half my hair on one side is just coming out and the other's, we had a big, listen, friends can be honest with you. And I said before this, Daisy, can I wear this hat? Because if I take it off, look at that hat hair. So the hat's staying on. But yeah, we think it's, and it's been, we decide like during the week, maybe what we're going to do our weekly Be Well on. And when Daisy came up with this idea and texted me about friendship, like it's class, because then what happens is it changes my lens for the week. So I've been thinking loads about friendships. And when I'm talking to my friends, like I'm like that extra level of, yeah, what makes them a good friend? Or what am I learning about them that I can bring up in our chats? And it's a really valuable exercise, I think, to do it. It's like, it's like the gratitude thing where you get you savor the enjoyment of it. So I've really got to savor my friendships this week, which is deadly, and reflect on all the toxic ones. Listen, I don't have any toxic ones, but no, it'll be, yeah, I think it's a cool thing to do. And I'm excited to hear what your things are as well, because it'll probably remind me of people who I'll then get to reach out to. And
one of the reasons why it popped into my mind, I had a random thought about one of the things we always say in the 6th class groups when we do Be Well workshops about the best way to have good friends is to be a good friend. And it's such a simple and maybe corny statement, but I think it's also 1,000,000% on the button. So and again, because we miss doing those type of workshops, it's nice to kind of maybe just do something to reference one of the more important parts of them. So let's do some ingredients.
Ingredients of good friendship.
Good friendship.
Go for it. You can go first. I'll let you go first.
So my first one is chemistry. So when I think about friendship, and maybe no, I actually do think it's a good word for it, because it's that energy that exists when two people are compatible, when two people connect, and whatever happens between them, there's a chemistry that starts to flow. Whereas it could be that they have the same sense of humor, they like the same stuff, and maybe they're going to share a space. It could be someone you're sitting beside in class or in college, or you've got started a new job, and you know that moment where it's just the chemistry just happens, and everything builds from there. So it's almost like I love the idea that chemistry can happen like quite early in a friendship, but then I think what sustains a friendship over time is that chemistry maintains, and there's new elements to it. But I love the idea that there is a chemistry between two people, and it includes, that's all I'm going to say in case I kind of dip into one of my other ingredients. But I think chemistry is a great ingredient for friendship stew.
It's kind of I'll leave one of mine. It's related. So the one that's related is interests, because, and I guess that's something similar, because sometimes I hate when people say, oh, you have to have something in common. Like, I have amazing friends who we're literally the opposite people, but that oppositeness makes us have that chemistry. But at the same time, like, when you find somebody who has a similar interest to you, like sense of humor, or they're really into space, or like a movie that you like, or movie series or whatever, and you just get so excited to talk to them about it, and you're on a wavelength. So I think those shared interests, and it doesn't mean like, because I think sometimes we mistakenly think a good friend means someone I can talk to about anything with. Well, not necessarily. Like, sometimes you need those friends who will make you laugh for 2 hours straight, rather than talking about your problem. So that I think a shared interest is an ingredient you need, but it doesn't have to be an interest in a thing. It could be a similar approach to life. It can be lots of different things, and that's where the chemistry lives. Is that cheating now? Because I kind of backed off yours.
No, I like it. I like a shared interest, and I love and as you said, the amount of people who I try to have a shared interest in Star Trek and fail, but you can still be my friend. But there is a threshold there. If people want to be, anyone out there who wants to be my friend, if you're a Trekkie, you're well on your way.
What a moment of friendship it is when somebody who has zero interest in what you have interest in, but loves you for other reasons, and you've connection to other reasons, tries to have it. Have you ever had that? Oh, stop.
Like, my kids won't even do that for me with Star Trek. Like, it hurts. Like,
I don't know. I get that's not Star Wars. Star Trek is that other one, isn't it? I did listen to Slayer the other day for you.
What a band, lads. Oh my God.
And I was like, okay. I appreciate like me and my dad, we have music time in the car if we're driving, if he's giving me a lift to work, and he'll show me music and I'll show him, but our taste is so different. But so we don't have a shared interest, but because we have a chemistry about our love for music, he'll be like, now I can appreciate that that's a good song, even though I don't quite like it. It's like Kanye West or something. The poor chap has sat through 4 minutes of, but then I'm like, yeah, and then there's a way to do it. So that's a lovely little way to do, I think, to show your friends you care, that if you've no interest whatsoever in something they have an interest in, but you just make a little reference to it. So lovely.
We sat down and compared our Spotify wrap up of the year. Me and O'Shane and Susanna. It was so much fun the other day.
What was your top one?
Mac Miller was the artist I listened to most in 2020, and he was, I think, 4 out of my top 5 songs as well. Mac got me through. What an album. Right, will I do another one?
Yes.
I'm gonna do, so there's one that I think is a really powerful ingredient, which is certainty.
Okay.
So like if our friendship stew is like ultimate like if we want the stew to be the best it can be, there's something about certainty in friendship that for me is like an unbelievable ingredient. That if you know, so again, I'm sure it's the same for so many people out there. If you a friendship doesn't have to be something where you see each other every day or even every week, or that you're in a constant communication. That it's something. I love the idea. I have some friends, so I have friends in different parts of the world, but even friends locally who have been my friends since childhood. And yet we don't seem to cross paths maybe so often. Actually, in my research, I came across some really interesting analysis about the older you get, that you need to pay attention to maintaining friendships, because you can get caught up in your job and paying bills and having families, and all of a sudden find yourself isolated from others. But at the same time, there's nothing more powerful than, like, I have a friend who, like, if I have a big decision to make and I haven't spoken to him in months and months and months, I know there is a certainty that I can give him a shout and say, like, can we meet up for a cuppa? I've got to have some, and he'll just go, yep, where and when. And that's absolutely gold in terms of an ingredient for friendship for me. So certainty, because it means then you don't have to think about anything. You don't have to wonder about how will I phrase this, what will I say, and when all the things I was thinking of during the week, I was thinking of young people who are developing friendships, or when you work with young people, and it's that, like, what do they say about friendships even in secondary school, or the friends that will last forever, or the friends you'll invite to your wedding or your first christening if you ever have one with a child, or but if you develop friendships and there's a certainty there, that's
and much. I think it's like because I was thinking about reliability, which is similar, but it doesn't mean that you're always available at the drop of a hat either. But it means that, because friendship, I was trying to think, right, like because I was thinking you might throw me a curveball of define friendship, right? And I was thinking friendship is a lot of moments all tied together in a shared story. And it's different than your own story, and it's different than their story, but it's your shared story together of these moments, right? And the certainty is that those moments will continue. It doesn't mean they're happening every time. So it doesn't, you like, to be a good friend doesn't mean that you're ringing, like you said, every day saying, how are you now? Remember that situation? Are you okay? But it does mean that if you've built up lots of moments of your shared connection is about problem solving together, then there's certainty that will continue, that there's reliability in the story. Yeah, I think that's class. And the one that it reminds me of, the one I wrote down is, it's a long sentence. You've one worders, which is better, but a friendship, I think, between people is when one person, that you hold each other in a high regard because of who you are and not because of what you do. So what I mean by that is, like, there's people who I feel so bad for celebrities, because I was thinking, how do they make friends? Because do people want to be their friend because they're famous or because they have money or whatever? Whereas I think a real friend is so generous about you and thinks you're deadly or believes in you because of who you are, because you're funny or you're chaotic or you're forgetful or you're messy or you're intelligent or you're whatever, not because they are always the one with the best parties, or because they're always the one with the nice clothes, or I like to be seen with them, or if they're loads of Instagram followers. And I think you always know the difference, because, and why I say hold you in high regard, or think highly of you, it's like somebody cheering you on. And then if there's ever a challenge about you, they know that they can say, well, that behavior wasn't great, but still I love you and I appreciate you as who you are. And I hold you and that's when, behind their back as well, if people are talking about them, they'll have your back because they genuinely hold you in a high regard. So I think
that's a good one. And it's like one of the ones I had, which is it really, is friendship lives in the heart more so than in the head. I think that captures what you're saying, that it's not something that it's, and in youth work we would talk about unconditional positive regard, as a kind of a foundation for your engagement with young people. So yeah, behavior is separate to the person. Will I give one more?
Yeah.
Well, like I suppose a big one, maybe an obvious one as well, an obvious ingredient for friendship is sharing. And there's so many different layers to that, which is also a wonderful part of friendship. But if you think about your friends, and again, the ingredients that sustain a relationship across or between friends, the sharing part, and that's, again, it could be anything from, like you said earlier, it doesn't have to be the sharing of your troubles and your deep, dark struggles, but it can be the like sharing of moments. It can be the sharing of time, sharing of your the celebration of your achievements, like that. When you, like, for me, when I, like, if I was to look through my phone about when my children were born and the people who I told about that, it can be sharing of, I've had a good bit of, like, I would say social media even is an asset in that regard, because I've reconnected with a lot of childhood or teenage friends, and it's the sharing of nostalgia. It's particularly lovely, like sharing of memories from the past, which is really interesting, because it's, again, the friendship isn't sustained necessarily by what we're doing now. It's about how we remember our youth, but it's still valid in its own right. But it's the sharing that really is the key part of that. So sharing, I think, is a lovely ingredient.
Well, my one last one would be obvious, maybe, but trust. But I was trying to think, like, what do we mean by trust? Because there's lots of different ways that trust looks like. So it could be, of course, trusting them with a secret. But it might also be that trust exists between friends to not judge even when you do something wrong. So you trust them to still like you, even though you made a mistake. So I have friends who I can go to and say, I'm after making a big blunder here. And they're like, Grace. And they won't go, oh no, God, it's fine. They'll be honest with me. I trust them to be honest. And they say, that was a mistake. How are we going to fix it? And they still, again, hold me in that high regard. And trusting that they value the friendship like you do as well. So trusting that they won't damage it and go and make it toxic, that because you're being vulnerable, right? When you're a friend, you've something to lose when you've invested that in a person. And so you're trusting them to mind it and keep it as sacred as possible as well. So, and I think trust looks lots of different ways for lots of different people. And there's always, but it's something, I think it's an ingredient that's needed to bring authenticity and a kind of sacredness to friendship.
Yeah, it's a threshold, isn't it? Like if friendship does evolve in degrees of depth or of authenticity, when the trust is real, and there's no, or very, very few question marks about it, that's a big indicator of a good friendship.
And that takes time, doesn't it, to build? And that's why it's so lovely. Like, it's those moments as they go, your friendship can deepen, which is great.
And some challenges as well. It's not just, and like, it's not always a positive momentum towards that necessarily. Sometimes trust grows out of some of the failures of friendship or some of the betrayals even of friendship, because forgiveness is part of friendship, a really big part of friendship as well. I would say is that if a friend isn't someone who will forgive your fails, then who else, so
I think that is actually so important, because I do think sometimes there's a little bit of a dangerous message on the positivity, world, where it's like, oh, if there's a red flag or somebody crosses your boundary, then let that person go. And I don't think it's quite as black and white as that. I know I've certainly done things to my friends that I've regretted, and they've said, yeah, that sucked. Please don't, here's the impact it had on me. Don't do it again. I'm learning all the time. So I think, that's actually, and trusting them to forgive you and trusting yourself not to do it again to them. That's solid.
Or even sometimes your friend plays the role of helping you to forgive yourself, even if what you've done hasn't impacted on them, but has an impact on the world or on you. A friend can be a really play a significant role in supporting you, because they might initiate that forgiveness, the idea of forgiveness, so that to create a space for you to forgive yourself and move on. We look at ingredients. Do you have any more?
No, probably somewhere. But look, they'll come up. But no, they're the main thing.
So if there were some toxic ingredients that, if added to the stew, would create some dodgy flavors, what might they be?
The first one, I think, is comparison. And that is where it becomes competitive between, maybe I should say competition. So these things can be healthy, of course. Like if I'm comparing myself to my friend who I want to be like and learning from them, that's one thing. But if I'm saying that person's my friend, but I'm, they have more something than me, I'm going to try and on the sly outmaneuver them, or it, and I get caught up in comparing and competing rather than connecting. I think it becomes a different relationship than friendship, because in friendship, I think the higher you both go together, the better. Whereas in competition, one has to come out on top, and then you're not holding the other and lifting the other up.
Interesting. And that could be, I think in modern times where there's quite a big culture of that around, like in social media or in education, in work, where competition is kind of supposed to be in our DNA. The worst part of it could slip into a toxic friendship or create toxicity maybe in a friendship. So like one of the ones for me would be, and I was thinking of like moving through, like flashing back to childhood and thinking about now, and again thinking about the journey of friendships, and how when you have to realize that there are elements of the relationship that might be signals to say that it's not going to fulfill its potential. But so one of the things that came into my mind was a controlling dimension to a friendship. So if there's a hierarchy in a friendship and someone has more power, or that in the nature of the connection is that they are in control, which means that they always make the decisions. It's what they're interested in that you end up doing often. And you don't, it's that thing, like if you don't feel, and we do this a lot in our mental health work, if you don't feel like you're seen or heard, then that's not good for your well-being. So if someone in a friendship is controlling, and again, that could be a relationship, I know that could easily be referenced, but it's also a factor, I think, in friendships that aren't about romantic relationships, shall we say. But a controlling dimension in a friendship isn't the basis for a flourishing, I don't think. And
that is kind of linked to my other one. I only came up with two for the toxicness. I didn't want to stay there, but it is linked. So the other thing I had written down is a want or expect for you to be different, or maybe it's an inauthenticity. So I think, and it's such a beautiful thing you said about friendship lives in the heart more than the head, that if you have to hide your heart more than you show it, then I don't think that that's a safe or flourishing friendship. And if it might, and that doesn't mean your behavior. So let's differentiate. Like if my behavior is I'm consistently, like, I don't know, like untrustworthy, or I don't turn up, or whatever it might be, a problematic behavior, I would expect my friend to say, no, that impacts me negatively, and that's okay. And that's about the forgiveness and the journey and all that. But if I have to hide who I am, if you have to say I don't like Star Trek just to fit into a friendship, then I think that's not really, that's toxic. And for me, what's been so lovely recently in COVID, I only got a text a friend recently because she is less anxious than I would be about the whole situation, and yet we have maintained our friendship because she has been non-judgmental about where I'm at with it and has accommodated, and I would do the same. And that was such, it could have been the same scenario dealt with in a different way, where I have to hide who I am or how I feel, could have gone toxic, but instead it became a really positive part in our story of being friends because it was met with non-judgment and an embracing of who I am and where I'm at. So that would be my second.
Cool. And again, it's that honesty again comes through when people are, and because like when circumstances change, when life like when someone in a friendship has something's impacting on them, or a curveball has landed from another part of their life, how a friend responds. Again, it's back to all those things about certainty and trust, and when they will influence the response of a friend during any sort of tough times. So one of the other one that I had for toxicity is if you discover, and I wonder, like, is this something that you discover because it might evolve? Like, for example, if what you have most in common, or if the chemistry between you is about negative energy towards someone else. So if there's a share, if the thing that connects you is who you both hate, or who you're both antagonistic towards, or if there's something that you know that, so if the chemistry is about something externally, so the friendship is only nurtured in negative energy, I would say that's a toxic element of a friendship. And or it's something that you can get caught in, that I can imagine, that even when you're together, it's like what are the things that you talk about? And if you just fall into the trap of always saying, oh, like she did that again, or he did that, and like that, and then it just becomes the culture of the friendship. I think you need to be mindful of the balance, because if it just falls into just always being like about expressing negativity, I think it might not flourish.
Because I think, one thing that blew my mind about trust, right, is it's not just whether somebody doesn't tell your secrets, but it's whether somebody tells somebody else's secrets to you. And it's kind of similar there, isn't it? Because if somebody is constantly giving out about others in an unhealthy way, so we all like rant. Like I have such a lovely friend in work, and we have 15 minutes if we both happen to be in the building at the same time. Like it's an essential service, we say, to have a rant or ring each other, and it's essential a 15-minute break from work to ring and have a rant. And that's fine, because it's unpacking, and but if the only basis of your friendship is that negativity, you would wonder, am I being spoken about in that way when I'm not here? So, and I think it doesn't mean never having to, like I say, that friend has held space for me to be angry and frustrated with people. But usually what happens is, by the end of talking to her, I actually feel better about whatever I'm talking about. And I'm like, all right, actually, I don't need to bring that negativity with me. We have unpacked it, and it's become something more positive now by the end of our time together. Whereas I think what you're saying is, if you start with the negativity and then by the end of the time spent together, you're even more negative, that's probably toxic.
Or if you find yourself or if your contribution is to validate the negativity, and then you just assume the role that because if I'm in a negative space, yes, I want it to be validated on some level, because you have some expectation of your friends. But if they're just adding fuel to the fire all the time, and then that's the only role they play, and the risk is that both them and you just see that there be a point where all you have is negativity to offer. So it's risky. There's one other one that I have, which is a very basic one, and again, thinking of young people, that like a toxic ingredient in a friendship is if you don't feel safe. And it sounds very basic, but I think, considering especially adolescence, so in those years from whatever 13 to 22 or so, that time when risk-taking and impulsivity and pleasure-seeking is all a factor of what it means to be a young person. But if you feel, and I know that I can reflect on my youth, and a lot of risky behavior. And considering like that, was there a point when I reflect on it? Was there a point where I should have been able to recognize that it was unsafe? And I can remember quite acutely moments where, like, the moment when you say no to someone who says, do you want to go in the car now?
Mm-hmm.
Do you want a lift? And you know that it's not, that taking a lift because of circumstances is probably not wise. And you can say, no, it's grand, I'll stroll, it's all good. Or it could be much more explicit, where someone's saying, we're going to go and do this thing now. And it's very explicit that there's huge risk and danger involved. It could be it could be illegal activity. It could be kind of just an adventure where there's risk, or it could be between, it could be a group scenario or between two people. And there's lots of, it's like, there's such, again, layers of decision making in there. But I think if someone knows that there's a discomfort, so a good friend would read the fact that, that thing in your friends group where if you are initiator of risky things and that someone in the group isn't up for it, so you find a way to gently allow them a pass so that they don't have to feel the pressure of it, and it doesn't affect the friendship. Like, it's not to say that you should have a moment of, oh, I'm a bad friend for doing the bad. Like, it might not. It might take you a while to realize you shouldn't be doing the bad things, but if you're consciously manipulating or forcing someone to be involved because you want to kind of diversify the risk across others, or that even that they're a weak link, and that the safety, if things go pear-shaped, that they might take the hit. So yeah, I just think safety is it can be a risky, toxic part of friendships.
Yeah, and I think that's very wise, actually, because again, all of the other parts that we've talked about come into the play there, like the non-judgment, the allowing people to be themselves or where they're at, and trusting them. Like, and that doesn't necessarily mean that the person who's asking them to do the risky behavior is bad, but it's what comes next, and how they can. Yeah, I agree. No, it's solid. So let's not put any of those toxic things in this stew that we're making. Soup.
No, I think we'll just.
What's the metaphor, lads?
What did you say it was?
This is who I am. I can't remember whether we're making soup or stew.
It's a goulash.
What is a goulash?
Google it.
No.
Right. So let's move on to how do you make friends? And I'm going to throw some suggestions at you and see what it means for you.
You have this hat hair, and then people will just flock to you.
Or that's a great test. How do you make friends despite your hair?
Oh, God.
Okay. So how to make friends. So if I was to say here, like, so this is something that I believe, but I want to hear your view on it. Is knowing yourself relevant to making friends?
I don't think it's essential, but I think it probably helps. So let's start with let's say someone who knows themselves quite well. They know that they don't like big parties. They love a one-on-one meal with someone. They know that they really enjoy sitcoms and all these kind of things. It will be easier for them to find somebody who is compatible. Like we're saying, that connection, shared interests. They know that if that person's like, come on, we're going to our third party of the weekend, that doesn't suit them. So yeah, in that type of way. And I think maybe as you get older as well, like that. Am I back?
That was random. Yeah.
Yeah. Where did I drop, lads? I don't know what was I saying? Like, so if you do know yourself, and that can be the basis for the nature of your connection. But I also think it's so exciting to discover together who you are. So like, you might not know that you really enjoy dancing until your friend is like, well, come on. And they've set the basis for maybe you know that you trust them so that if you go and try something new and you hate it, you can be like giving them the eyes. I don't know whether boys do this, actually. This can be my return question to you. Girls can read all the different eye symbols in an instant. So like this means come get me, whereas this means this is okay. Like subtle difference, girls can read it across the room. I'm telling you, in bars and in clubs, anywhere, girls know. But so I think you can also discover things about yourself within a safe friendship. And that discovering can bring such a joy as well. Like it could be like, if your friend joins the hockey team in school and you're not going to get to spend much time with them. They're like, do you want to give it a go? And then turns out you love it.
Yeah, it's a good show. And I think because one of the things I discovered in my research was that there's actually a correlation between like developing healthy friendships and the degree to which you are willing to put yourself out there, even though it's scary. That there's a higher percentage chance of you making friends and developing friendships. And again, so on some level, I think that's, if you do that with intention and consciously knowing that it's like you might get burned or it might not work out as you imagine, but that you're just doing that, you're doing the exploration. Because I think there's a bit of fear about that now. And I think it's important too. So I know I'm an introvert and I know how I carry that into situations. So I must consciously put myself out there, even now in my older age, when I'm at an event where I don't know anyone. I have to make a conscious decision. And my problem is that I'm comfortable not mingling and mixing, so that's an easy out for me. Whereas it's also good to mix and mingle, so I can consciously do it without a huge expectation of it being a friendship development. But I think in younger years, you do have to discover those parts of yourself, and what makes you tick and what. But to not just have too much hanging on it, I suppose, can be wise in terms of how to make friends. So yeah, it is good to put yourself out there and embrace the scariness of it, because I think what would be risky nowadays is if you search for certainty, or if you don't take a risk because you can't deal with a burn or a rejection, or the fact that I've invested so much in this and it hasn't worked out. I think there should be there's something about the attitude towards making friends at different stages in your life, or if you're in a new environment, instead of just making a beeline for the person who seems to be friendly and you're like, right, I'm going to lock on. Hopefully this works out.
And do you know what's so weird? I think you can make friends with people who you've known, but you haven't always been their friend. So like at different points of your life. So like let's say even in a work environment, you've known people, they've been in this sphere. What are you laughing at?
Oh God, it's because I had a thing about the three levels of friendship.
No way.
So when you were talking there, I was thinking, so that's a movement from there's the hi bye friendship, which is hi, bye. There's the so that's like, you could be in work or it could be in college, or it's like, oh hi, how's it going? And then see you later. And that's it. Then there's the second circle friendship, which is people who aren't in your inner circle, but they're on the second. So you might have met them through someone else, or you might have known them because of an environment or circumstance, and you just over time and then you've got true friends. So second circle, or it sounds like they've got potential, but they may or may not, and maybe over time when you get to know them, but because they're second circle, you won't. It's like that. It's like friends of friends, or people that it just takes longer to realize maybe that there is a lot of chemistry there. There's a lot of.
But have you ever had the opposite happen either? Like I have a friend who I remember I met her. She was a friend of a friend, and I met her at a situation that was extremely stressful for me, and it was the most bizarre thing. But she copped, because she's very intelligent emotionally, like she copped that I was very, very stressed out and it was a crowd situation, and just very, very slyly just linked me. And we had met now. The mutual friend we had, we both held in such high regard that we trusted their judgment of each other, I imagine. But there was no time for us to be like, hi, bye, how are you? What are you into? It was like, we're straight in the eye of a storm. And she was just like, I'm just going to link this person. And now she is one of my dearest friends. And it was so nice. I only met her 2 years ago, less even, and I'm 29. So like you meet these people along the way, as well as the people you've had for, like, I also remember one of my oldest friends, very first day of junior infants. She still might, when did I talk to her? Yesterday, maybe, like, and I remember her on the first day of primary school. So there is, but so I don't know if you can't contrive those moments, but you can put yourself out there for situations where they might happen. And it's a lovely balancing act between the excitement of the potential, but not getting too, like you say, locked into the outcome.
Right. And believing that it's possible, I think, is so important. Just that you don't have to, your group of friends are not. It's not a contract where no one else is allowed in, or this is it now. It's full, so there'll be no space for anyone else. That, like, I know when I was growing up, I had my school friends were separate to my street friends because I lived far away from the school. So totally different groups. And then you might have your football team friends who you see when you're at training. It might be twice a week and then at weekends, but again, you don't cross paths necessarily. But you can still have good friends between multiple groups. But I think, if you're open to the possibility, or even that you recognize that there are hi-bye friends who are, and that's okay. Like that everyone doesn't have to be brought in either, and because then you're like the pressure of, like, actually I'm at my limit, I can't make any more friends now, so sorry, but I'll come back to you when I have a slot.
When I cut someone out. No, and that's, there's something, I'm a devil for that. When you were saying about the introvertedness, like, what I have learned is that I'll make 7 friends on one like evening out, and then I'm like, because then they're like, when are we meeting up? I'm like, I don't know. But then there's the ways that you balance that, and that's fine. And like you said as well, like, there's some friends who I don't need to talk to even every month, and others who I would talk to every day. And it isn't that so, like, deadly that they can all be different. And when you say the inner group as well, they might all know each other. Although I don't know if you've ever had the experience of 2 of your friends who don't know each other getting to meet each other and who they know about each other. I've had 2 moments of, like, one of the launch of one of our campaigns where my 2 groups of friends came together, and then also a birthday party, and I just couldn't handle, it was too much for me emotionally. I was so overwhelmed with the feeling that they got to meet each other, and it was lovely because they got to be like, yeah, we know that story about you, and you know that. So they're, your friends, it doesn't have to be one group either. You might know them from your closest friends might be from all dotted all around, and that's cool as well. Like, the variety is the spice of this friendship soup or stew. What are we making?
Goulash, I told you.
Oh yeah, sorry, goulash.
So what about how to be a good friend, and words like that were already mentioned, like being authentic, being yourself, being open, being honest. Like, is that something? Should people be conscious of those things? Do you think sometimes people have to park some of that because of the fear of not having any friends? Is there compromise?
Yeah, well, is there compromise? I think a good place to start, and it's like we say, to what you said earlier, is to have good friends, you need to be a good friend, is before you're like, right, I'm going to be 100% myself, open and honest, take it or leave it. Maybe start by valuing honesty in others. So if somebody does show you a little bit of their heart, it can be so easy to just skip over it because you don't want to be awkward. But sometimes it could be just a message to say, wow, thank you for sharing that. Or, that was really cool. Let's talk about that again sometime. Or, and then if you're appreciating it and valuing it in others, it might become easier then for you to show others that as well. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, so it's a balancing act between how you contribute to the nurturing of a friendship, or the evolution or the growing of a friendship. And I think I think there's pressure on people nowadays to reveal all, and because there's currency in that, or you might just think that you have, like, going back to your, in one sense, about this competitive dimension of what makes me worthy of friendship. Is it like revealing things that are out there or a little bit like unusual, or like, am I enough? So is my authentic self enough for a friendship? And I think a lot of young people are under so much pressure to perform a personality rather than just have one. And then I think they just lose the sense of what it means to be yourself and be authentic. And when you realize that, eventually, I think you'd have to take a hit then. So I really think the foundation of, and that's why I think going back to knowing yourself and being open to discovering yourself along the way helps you to build. And then you can set those boundaries as well about who, what the real you finds acceptable or reasonable, and how you communicate that to friends, and how that kind of evolves over time. But I really think that the best friendships are those where, there is a point where your authentic self is there, and it's there because I think, back to that thing about, if I feel seen for who I am, is there anything more wonderful than that in the whole world? Whereas if I'm hiding who I am, or I have to park the majority of it, or I'm not sure when I can, and then the fear kicks in about, I've left it too late. There's a big part of me that I wanted to share, but I didn't get to, or I don't know when to, or so I think it's being, and that's, again, it's easy to say and hard to do, I suppose. And nowadays, I really think it's so important that people appreciate as well that developing friendship is awkward. It's uncomfortable. Like, I was the king of red face when I was a kid. Like, I just because I was shy, if the spotlight was put on me or someone asked me a question or like that I wasn't ready for, I would just have a big red face, like, and I carried it with me as like just something that made me so uncomfortable, and I had to work so hard on kind of taking control of that. But the more comfortable I was with saying, this is who I am, then the red face only happens when you don't, like, when you're afraid that people will either make a judgment on you, or you're not ready to show who you are, maybe, or there's discomfort. But
that's so, like, because I wonder what would be my red face thing, and I think it would be like performing a bit. Like, I was always the messer, and probably still am. So it's partly who I actually am. But if I'm like uncomfortable with something, I'm like, don't worry, I'll make you laugh, and then you won't have to see. And it's only the way I got over that was not like, it was different to you, that you kind of took control of it for yourself. And I think that's important. What I started to do was value others for who they were, rather than who I expected them to be, or what maybe society sometimes tells you to be. Like, oh, the fun one is always the party goer. Whereas I have a dear friend who loves to read and write, and we go for one-on-one coffees, and it is so lovely because, and you maybe wouldn't think that with me being like somebody who would go out dancing all the time, but that's because I value her for who she really is. Then I learned to value me more for who I am, and that's kind of how I got over that over-performing to distract from who I really am. So yeah, there's tons of different ways that I think we all do that, and it is messy and awkward, but that's why it's. And then, do you ever like go back and look at those messy, awkward moments after you've gotten over them, and then you're like, oh, remember that?
That's the risk of doing nostalgia, like when you're kind of reconnecting with childhood friends. I'm like, what was I like, lads?
Oh, so great.
Wow. Okay, I have one more for kind of how to be a good friend. And I think it's a pretty big one as well. I think, especially if I think about young people nowadays, but it's commit to showing up. What do you think about that?
That is the ultimate, isn't it? Because that can mean so. It's even more than reliability and certainty. Yeah, I think that means showing up even when like it's hard to, like where what my head goes to, and maybe it's a bit sad, but like when people are grieving, it means so much to them. And I know that that's hard to do at the moment, to show up, and it might be showing up by a text rather than in person now, or sending flowers or whatever. But when things are tough, and saying the words, I don't know what to say, I'm here, I don't know, I'm sorry, I don't know what to say, that's so awkward, isn't it? But I'd rather that than I never reached out to you. And there's something about, yeah.
And I think it's about like sometimes that's about parking your own needs or desires, or not allowing your ego to make the decision about, well, this is more important for me now, or like even, you know, because showing up is also about that, what we talked about earlier. Showing up is about maybe creating space for someone who's done something wrong, so that they can begin the forgiveness piece, where our showing up can be a very uncomfortable scenario where you don't know how to behave or what to say, and yet if you realize that your presence has power, then showing up is everything. And I think it's also about the little things, about, are you going out? No. And then it's like, I remember when I was younger getting into a rut of saying no to going out, and then people stop asking you. And when you reflect on it, you think, well, that's legit, because I'm not giving a signal, and I'm really just, and maybe that's okay because I'm navigating myself away from something that I'm not interested in. But there are those, you know, those times where it's not the thing that you really, really want to do, but you do because you should. I think that's also, there's a showing up there, or when, you know, for me, there's also something about visiting someone in prison, or, you know, standing beside someone who's done something that they're being judged for, where you now might be in a firing line, or you might have to take some of the heat of that, or you might have to share the burden then of the judgment. And I think that's a huge challenge for a friendship. And if you understand all the things, then there isn't much. I think if like a wonderful friendship brings you to a place where you can, that doesn't take too long to make that decision, that about showing up, which is, it's great when you recognize that.
Yeah. I did that takes bravery, isn't it? When you stand beside somebody who is getting that judgment, but you're able to, what you're doing there, I think, is zooming out on the moment that they're in and putting it along the line of all the moments you've had and who you know, and that's honoring the story of the friendship.
And it goes back to what you said at the beginning about believing in someone. So if you stop believing in them, then you need to just say that.
Yeah.
And that's, then you cut your ties. But if you still can find it in yourself to believe in someone, then you have to show up.
And it's like, your story about saying no to people to going out is so interesting for me, because like that's about the adaptability of a friendship. Like when I stopped drinking alcohol, my friends like didn't ask me, did I still want to drink alcohol? They were like, okay, so will we go for coffee or will we go swimming? Like, how do we, all of a sudden our story of where we used to, the space where we used to be friends isn't there anymore for reasons. Okay, cool. Let's find some new spaces. And so being dynamic and adaptable to life's things, or if somebody has a new job or they move, like you said, move country, how do you maintain the friendship that's now different? And being a bit creative, that can be fun as well. And you discover new things that you might have in common that you didn't know before. And that's what we're all doing in this time. Zoom quizzes.
Yeah. And there's always something, like if you commit, like for me now, if so many friends from youth, then all we do is share, like get our kids to make silly videos and photos. We're just having crack through our maniac children some weeks, or like, so it's possible. It's not just so much about we have our own nostalgia, but if they're far away, it's the celebrating the things that are going on, and like that, you imagine, even our EVS, the people we had in high res on EVS, who I would regard as friends, but like that, if you go back through them all, I haven't seen them in years and years, but every now and then me and the lads will make a video and put it in a WhatsApp message to them just to remind them that we're thinking of you, and in the nature of the friendship, which was always a fun and crack. And that's lovely because it just stimulates, it just gives you a little hit. But it's also, I think there's value in reminding people that during that time frame, they were a friend, and it was valuable.
And that reminds me of one final thing about, what about intergenerational friendships? Do you think that there's some, so like, for example, my granddad, who's 87 or 89, don't know, no, I do need to ring him, but we have amazing chats and a friendship. Even though you're like, what sort of connections do you have? What wavelength? But you do have such a wavelength.
It's like, again, like when I was a teenager, a wild bad boy. Every day after school, I called into my granny's to fill her coal bucket for her and light the fire if it was needed, and sit and have the chats, drink tea. And she was on her own, and it was, and I know even in the context of the Keeping Well initiative in Wicklow and the Mind Your Mood, that there was a really great conversation about befriending services. And I just imagined like young people in Corlin and Og, or young people just kind of acquiring the skill of that, and then like offering that as a service, whether it's in their own family or if they're of the right age to be able to have the skill. Imagine the gift of that you would give and receive if you were, going through. And again, I've met people who work in that field whose job is to connect with older people who are isolated or vulnerable. I would absolutely. Now, for me, if I had a list to get through, I think I'd struggle, because whoever gets first, I'd be like having the chats, lads. We'd be gone. Like, I don't know how you wouldn't be able to hang up. Like, but I think, like, I genuinely think that intergenerational friendship, like, to lose that, I think we will lose a part of our humanity. So yeah, and maybe that is an area that needs a bit of nurturing. And I think because we've separated, like, I think we've separated young and old a little bit in the world, or it's back to that time, that showing up piece. I'm too busy to be hanging out with my grandparents or going connecting in with. And yeah, I'd hate to think that people would not realize or would forget how much that feeds your soul, that type of stuff. So that's a lovely thought to end on. This is our longest one yet, I think.
It is, and we didn't even have theme music for this one, but we hope people got something out of it. Well, I end up with I told you at the start.
Cover.
What's the ship that can never sink? A friendship. I think that's from SpongeBob SquarePants. And that's the end of our friendship. Thanks for tuning in, everyone.
See yous.